You did everything they told you to do. You got the job. You show up every day. You don't waste money on anything reckless. And yet, somehow, at the end of every month, there's nothing left. If you've ever quietly wondered what you're doing wrong, the answer is nothing. You're not broke because you failed. You're broke because no one ever taught you the rules of the game you were born into. So let me show you those rules. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them. So you do the responsible things. You make a budget. You cancel the subscriptions you forgot you had. You skip the daily coffee the way every finance expert tells you to. You earn a paycheck, you spend a little less than you make, and you put the difference away. This is the plan. Work hard, spend less, save the rest, and slowly, surely get ahead. It's the same advice your parents got and their parents before them. And for a while, it even feels like it's working. The jar fills up. The number in your account inches higher. You feel responsible, disciplined, like you're finally doing it right. And here's the cruel part. You are doing it right. You're following the instructions exactly as they were handed to you. The problem was never your effort. The problem is that the instructions were written for a world that no longer exists. Because every single year, somehow, you have less. The rent goes up. Groceries go up. The same cart that cost $80 a few years ago now costs $130. You got the raise you fought for, and it vanished before you ever felt it. This isn't in your head, and it isn't your fault. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost more than 85% of its purchasing power. Sit with that. The money resting in your savings jar is quietly dissolving while it sits there doing nothing wrong. And it gets stranger. Since the late 1970s, the average worker has become far more productive, creating more value per hour than any generation in history. By every logic, pay should have soared with it. Instead, productivity climbed more than 60% while the typical worker's wages barely moved. You are doing more work, more skillfully, for money that buys less. Look at the single biggest purchase of a person's life: a home. In 1971, a typical house cost around 2.5 times a year's income. Today, it costs more than 5 times as much, and in many cities, far more. A home one ordinary salary could once carry now demands 2 incomes, and still feels out of reach. That's not your generation being weaker or lazier. That's the simple math of money that loses value every year. And even the safe choice betrays you. For most of the last 20 years, an ordinary savings account paid well under 1%, while prices rose 2 to 3 times faster. Saving carefully became a guaranteed, quiet loss. So you tighten the budget again. You cut a little deeper. And you end up in exactly the same place. At some point, the real question isn't, what am I doing wrong? It's, what is actually happening here? Because when an entire generation does everything right and still can't get ahead, the problem was never the players. It's the board. And the board is tilted by design. And the moment you understand how it got tilted, everything changes. Most people believe money is printed by the government and that there's a fixed amount to go around, so if you're short, you simply didn't grab enough of it. But that's not how money works at all. Around 90% of all the money in existence was never printed by anyone. It's created out of nothing by ordinary commercial banks, typed into existence the instant someone takes out a loan. This isn't a conspiracy theory. The Bank of England spelled it out plainly in 2014. Money, it turns out, is mostly just debt, wearing a disguise. And it traces back to one quiet turning point. In 1971, the dollar was cut loose from gold. From that day on, money was backed by nothing but belief, which meant it could be created without limit. And a system built on endlessly created debt has exactly one requirement. Prices must keep rising. Forever. That steady inflation you're told is normal and healthy? Central banks deliberately target it around 2% every single year. It isn't an accident, and it isn't a force of nature. It is the goal. And 2% sounds harmless until you realize that at that rate, money loses half its value in about 35 years, roughly a single working life. But here's the part almost no one is ever told, the part that quietly decides who wins. When new money is created, it doesn't reach everyone at the same time. Economists have a name for this, going back nearly 300 years, the Cantillon effect. Whoever receives the newly created money first gets to spend it before prices rise. And who's first in line? Banks, governments, the people and institutions who already own the most. By the time that new money trickles all the way down to your paycheck, and the prices have already gone up, you're not imagining that the wealthy seem to get richer first. They are literally handed the money first, and you are paid in dollars that are already worth less. So, the rules you were given, work hard, hold your cash, wait, were quietly guaranteed to lose from the start. Cash was designed to fade. The game rewards something else entirely. And once you can finally see that, you stop feeling like a failure and start seeing the actual rules. Because the people who seem to get richer without effort aren't smarter than you, and most of them don't work harder than you. They simply learned the real rules earlier, Akos. They understood that holding large amounts of cash in a world of guaranteed inflation is like holding ice in a warm room, so they don't. They trade that fading currency for things that rise with inflation instead of being eaten by it. Ownership, equity, assets, the things that quietly appreciate while everyone else's savings shrink. Consider just one number. The wealthiest 10% of Americans own roughly 90% of all stocks. While most people are taught to save the money that's losing value, a small few are busy owning the assets that capture it. Picture two people 10 years ago. Both start with the same amount. The first does the responsible thing and keeps it in cash. The second buys a simple basket of ownership in the economy. A decade later, the careful saver's money quietly buys less than it used to, while the owner's has more than doubled. Same start. Same 10 years. Opposite endings, decided entirely by which rule each of them was playing by. And the wealthy go one step further. They turn the system's own debt, the very force crushing the average person, into a tool to buy more of those assets. None of this is hidden. There's no secret club, no forbidden knowledge. The rules are simply written in a language no one bothered to teach you. The instant you learn to read them, the very same forces that have been draining your savings can slowly begin to work in your favor instead. So, no, you were never bad with money. You were handed losing instructions for a game whose real rules were never printed on the box. And that's the strange, almost hopeful truth buried in all of this. The money in your account isn't wealth. It's a promise, slowly expiring. Real wealth was never about hoarding more of something designed to disappear. It was about understanding the game clearly enough to stop losing it. The system isn't going to change for you. It doesn't have to. It was never your job to fix the board, only to finally see it for what it is. And now you do. The people who get ahead aren't the ones who worked the hardest. They're the ones who at some point simply looked up and read the rules. You just did. The only question left is what you do tomorrow morning, now that you can see them too.